In 2023, more people actually died in a single Japanese prefecture than were born across the entire nation. The country recorded a historic low of 727,000 births that year. Meanwhile, roughly 1.57 million people died in that same year. This chart shows Japan's total fertility rate. To hold a population steady requires 2.07 children per woman, represented by this line. Japan hit a record 1.20 in 2023. And this deficit isn't new. The rate has been trapped below replacement for 50 years. The resulting math leaves Japan shrinking by nearly 850,000 people every 12 months. That is the equivalent of erasing the entire city of Kyoto from the map annually. The country is vanishing quietly. There are no sudden disasters causing this drop, only the slow, creeping abandonment of local infrastructure. Rural schools, originally built to educate hundreds of students, are now operating with only a fraction of their intended capacity. The visible emptiness creeping into public spaces across the country is the direct physical consequence of a society that simply stopped having children. The current reality is a severe contrast to the post-war era. In 1949, during Japan's baby boom peak, annual births exceeded 2 million. The economic miracle of the 1960s and 70s was built on a very specific social architecture. Large corporations offered lifetime employment to male salarymen, while women were expected to leave the workforce to raise children. That model broke when the asset bubble burst in 1991. The guarantee of lifetime employment was replaced by a growing class of feeder workers, young adults trapped in low-wage, non-regular contracts who lacked the financial security to start families. Looking at this stacked bar chart, you can see the staggering financial barrier to parenthood. Raising a child to university graduation in Japan now costs up to $135,000, consuming a massive proportion of median household income. For women, the cultural expectations remained rigid even as the economy changed. Government data shows Japanese fathers average only 41 minutes of childcare per day, making marriage an unappealing proposition for educated women, expected to shoulder the entire domestic burden. In Japan, nearly 98% of births occur within marriage. When the social contract becomes financially out of reach for men and culturally restricted for women, marriage rates collapse. Fewer marriages mean fewer babies. You can see the exhaustion across the modern workforce. Yuki is a 31-year-old nurse working 12-hour rotating shifts at a severely understaffed hospital. Her rent and student loans consume 60% of her take-home pay, leaving her with zero time or energy for relationships. On the other end of the economy, business owners like 58-year-old Kenji run factories where a third of the staff is over 55. When they retire, the labor market is completely paralyzed. There is no one left to hire. Attempts to fill these gaps with foreign trainees have largely failed. Registered foreign workers still make up an insignificant 3.2% of the total workforce. For the elderly, this localized collapse leads to total isolation. 78-year-old Haruko lives in a rural town where her nearest hospital and local supermarket both shut down, stripping away her basic infrastructure. The demographic deficit has created a paralyzed society. The young are too overworked to reproduce, and the elderly are outliving the services designed to support them. Other nations are traveling down the exact same path. South Korea's fertility rate has fallen to a catastrophic 0.72, driven by hyper-competitive education costs and an expensive urban housing market in Seoul. Following the end of its one-child policy, China's population began shrinking in 2022, with a fertility rate sitting at just 1.09. Western nations like Germany and the United States appear stable on paper, but their declining native birth rates are heavily masked by sustained, aggressive immigration. Because Japan has historically maintained strict resistance to immigration, they are experiencing the raw math of modernization earlier than everyone else. They're simply the furthest point on a global demographic curve. The Japanese government declared this an emergency in 2023, establishing a Children and Families Agency with a 3 trillion yen annual budget. Yet even their own models acknowledge they cannot stabilize the population before 2060. This curve tracks the pessimistic trajectory. Facing a fiscal death spiral from rising social security costs and shrinking tax revenues, Japan's population plunges from a peak of 125 million in 2010 to roughly 63 million by the year 2100. Japan is the world's third largest economy. What they get right or wrong over the next decade will become the most vital policy lesson for every other developed nation facing this exact same math. For deeper analysis, follow Japan Answers on YouTube and find our full breakdown on Substack.